Good afternoon or good morning, depending on your time zone. I'm Jennifer Wilson, and I'm here today with my friend Amy Vetter for our usual Friday Leadership Lunch Chat. But what is not usual is that we have a guest today, and we love it when we have guests. And we really love that we have this guest today. This is Tifphani White-King, and she is here from Mazars, USA. She is the tax service line leader and really leader manager extraordinaire. From my viewpoint, I don't want to embarrass her, but she's just a really wonderful, generous leader. And we've been talking about generous leadership for a while now, and Amy and I are really on this journey of exploring all the attributes of generous leadership. And when we thought of one of the attributes, which was being a giving leader, we thought of Tifphani. We were like, man, we've got to invite her and have her come speak and talk about sort of her journey in leadership and why generosity is important and where giving fits in her experience. And so without further ado, maybe Tifphani, if you want to say a few words of introduction, and then maybe start with sort of where does generosity fit from your perspective in the discussion of leadership?
Sure, happy to. And thank you for those kind words and the very warm welcome to both you, Jen, and Amy. Thanks again. So happy to be here with you and the audience. For me, my career started in a very unusual way. Usually for most tax leaders, they've probably had a very similar schooling background, probably a major in accounting or finance. I had none of that. I actually started my career thinking that I would be a dancer. I started as a ballerina at the age of 3, and I studied modern dance in college. And I said, I want to be a professional dancer and live my life, travel the world in the theater. At the time when I graduated, dancers, unfortunately, were very underpaid. And I said, there's no way I can support myself in New York City on this salary. So at that time, when you didn't know what you wished to do, what did you do? You went on for more schooling. So I went to law school. What I didn't tell you is I also majored in economics and philosophy. And that very, very much helped me throughout my law school career. And it was in law school that I clerked for the Second Appellate Division in New York. I worked at a law firm, and I discovered the world of consulting through an internship. I started my career at Arthur Andersen. After Arthur Andersen closed its doors, sadly, I transitioned to Deloitte. I'm a partner at Deloitte. And now I'm here at Mazars as head of tax. So that's a bit of a synopsis of my leadership journey. I'm here at the grace of others. It is not my work alone. And so speaking of this topic of generosity, I had opportunities provided to me along the way. There were people who gave me a shot. They gave me a chance. They encouraged me. They said, Tifphani, you can do this. They helped me move from staff level entry to senior associate to manager, to senior manager, and finally to partner. And here before you today as leader of the head of tax for the US and also a member of our global tax board. Again, without the generosity and the time and the giving of my mentors, my coaches, my sponsors, Jennifer, you know this very well. You're one of them. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I don't know what I would do. Oftentimes we say, especially when we're talking about children, it takes a village to raise a child. You know that old proverb? I say it takes a village to help each and every one of us throughout our career. So it's the generosity of that village by which I'm here before you today.
That's awesome, Tifphani.
That's awesome.
So Amy, what questions do you have of Tifphani?
Oh, I have so many other questions now.
I know. Go ahead and ask.
That just took my head in a complete different direction.
Good, go.
Just your journey alone, we need to take offline. Yeah, so I think, what we wanted to focus with you today is on the giving piece of generosity. And maybe the examples that you had of giving, if there's things that you can remember that actually stuck with you that then you have now given back.
Yeah. So one really important item, sometimes ego gets in the way for some people, right? Mm-hmm. And it very much is me, I. And when opportunities come before you or a spotlight comes before you, a media opportunity comes before you, you think, how can I do this, right? Well, along my journey, other people gave me those opportunities. And I said, when I make it, as I'm climbing that ladder or as I'm climbing that matrix or lattice, however we wish to describe it, I want to pay that forward and give others that opportunity as well. So when opportunities come my way, whether it's speaking engagements, whether it's conferences, whether it's media opportunities, written opportunities, I always try to think of other people that could really benefit from that, right? Of course, I could talk on any topic about tax, right? But there's other specialists that are in the field too, that are part of my family, my firm, and even outside of my firm, right? Just giving to those in the community that need that spotlight on them as well. So I always try to think of others and I say, who can I help to shine a spotlight on so that that helps them to propel and accelerate and promote in their career? So I think it's really important for us as leaders to realize when we have a seat at the table, when we have a microphone, when we have a voice, how we use it, how we amplify that to really help others. You know, lifting up as we climb is the adage of NABA, the National Association of Black Accountants. And I always carry that with me. And I think about how can I lift others up as we continue to climb together.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And I'm a big believer in it. I try to practice it myself. You're right. There always is that sort of balance between who do I thrust into this opportunity? Maybe it's going to be scary for them when it would be easier for me, but that's exactly the right person to put forward then. I just love that. I think that's great. So what else in the subject of giving, like what else would a generous leader do, either in terms of them giving to others or maybe trying to create an organization focused on giving or a cultural feeling about that?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts there?
Here I think about the word apprenticeship, right? And we at Mazars, we're very much an apprenticeship firm company. We live by the apprenticeship model. And so it's really, it's an obligation, it's a responsibility for us to really bring along the next group of professionals to enter the profession, to really give of our time, to really give of our expertise and everything that we've learned to really teach and develop, whether it's tax, whether it's audit, whether it's consulting, whether it's soft skills, or whether it's just other areas of business, or even just sharing of personal, right? Especially this past year, we've all had remarkable things happen to us from a professional standpoint, right? Some may be good, some may not be not so good, but we need to give of ourselves, our time, and our experience to really bring our professionals along.
So with that, with giving time, how do you carve that out? Is it intentionally carved out or is it more organic? Because, especially in this profession, time is everything, right? And so how do you go about making sure that you have the right amount of time for the people that need it?
It's funny because time, it's one of those fickle things. And I always say we really make the time for the things that we want to do. Just think about your own personal and daily lives, right? If there's something that you really, really want to do, if there's someone that you really, really want to see, if there's a place that you really, really want to go, you're going to find a way to make it happen. And something I learned fairly early on from one of my coaches as a senior associate in the business, Tifphani, you are the master of your calendar. And we've all heard that, right? She said this to me during the context of a conversation in which I came forward and I said to the answer, how are you? I said, I'm really busy. I'm overwhelmed today. I'm just so busy. This is how I entered the conversation, right? I'm busy. Well, Tifphani, why are you so busy? Well, let me show you my calendar. And I showed my calendar and it was just back to back to back to back. And probably not a strange scenario for any of us, right? If we look at our calendars, we're just probably overscheduled. And she said, well, it looks like you accepted each and every one of these items. And if I'm not mistaken, the way your system works, you have an option to accept, to decline, or to list yourself as tentative. But it looks like you've accepted each and every one of these things. Did you give some thought as to whether or not this was a very smart way to set up your day? Did you give yourself some time in between to just breathe, to just change your mindset, to prepare for what's ahead of you, to even take a bio break, right? Those are so important. And I said, wow, you're really right. And from there, we talked about the conversation of learning how to say yes and how to say no, but really setting up that calendar and making time. So that was a lesson I learned very early on. And I really think about how I plan my days, how I plan my weeks even. And when people do ask, because sometimes you can't plan for conversations, you can't plan for dialogue, sometimes it just happens. It's thrown in front of you. But I just think, how can I fit this in, right? It's important. I need to dedicate some time to this. So how can I make time? Even if it's 15 minutes, maybe it's grabbing a cup of coffee. Just yesterday, I had a request to sit down with a rising star in our organization, a senior associate outside of our business line in audit, actually. And what a great conversation. I grabbed one of our peers that's also sitting in the tax practice, and we went up, we sat outside on the terrace, and we had a cup of coffee, and we just had a chit chat. And it was just fantastic. So yes, formally scheduling time, but also informally knowing when people really need you and making that time is critical.
I love every bit of that story, and I love the story of your mentor sharing that you're 100% responsible for how you spend your time, and also sharing her tips for how she manages her little windows of extra opportunity, maybe the small break periods, but also leaving that slush in the schedule so that somebody that needs you can have you. I think all that's great, and making time for people when they ask. I'm a big believer in the universe. Causes us to be together for whatever reason, puts us together, and so when someone comes to me and stands before me and says, "I need some time," I just feel like I need to give them that time. I got to find it somewhere. So I love that. What about like culturally? Because part of what you've talked about in this apprenticeship model is something that we would call experiential learning. The idea of having people experience something. They may not be doing it yet, but they're coming along to watch it done, whether it's a referral source meeting or a networking event or participating at a conference when they really haven't done that before, or delivering an audit report or meeting with a client on tax strategies or whatever it may be. So, how does Mazars, or how do you, from a tax service line perspective, encourage more senior leaders to bring people along? And then how do we deal with the fact that sometimes people say, wow, we're putting two people's time on that thing. We can't recover that from the client if it's a client engagement. How do we convince people that investment makes sense?
Yeah, it's a challenge, right? Even in the investment world, you're making an investment in something and you don't quite know what your return is going to be. Hopefully you can calculate that, but you don't quite know. You're taking a bit of a gamble, you're taking a bit of a chance, right? But it's that culture of really giving, right? And again, going back to the giving of time, the giving of your experience, the giving of your wisdom, to really share that opportunity to help someone else grow, to accelerate, and to promote. And so we spend a lot of time, we know that we've come up in this apprenticeship model and that we have to pay it forward. So we are willing to really invest the time within our people to really, really make that happen. It's who we are. Oftentimes our motto is "We are Mazars," right? That R is association, it's respect, and excellence. Those are the pillars of We Are Mazars. And it's those three pillars that really, really remind us, even when we don't think we have it time, can we really do it? Yes, we can. And why? Because we are Mazars. So we really make that happen for our people. We just live it. It's the way that we work.
And that whole thing is very inclusive, but living the inclusive culture is sometimes harder than the tagline. Yes. And the biases that exist, especially in this profession, and the struggles, we've gone through this year of just making sure everyone does feel included and heard, and that they have a career trajectory if you don't look like me. So, in quotes. So I would love to know how you put that into practice. from a giving perspective of really helping people be heard without fear. How do you actually change the culture beyond the tagline of inclusiveness? What are you seeing that is your part in it, and maybe the change as well in other leaders?
That is a great, great question. We all have biases, whether we wish to acknowledge them or not. And I think it's really important as leaders that we do at least acknowledge it within ourselves. And so I think it's important, if we can, if we're comfortable, that we're transparent and we share that acknowledgement. I'll share this with you and with the audience. For me, new mom, a COVID mom, as they say, right?
Oh, congrats.
Thank you. My son now is 15 months old.
Wow.
And the very first doctor's appointment that my husband and I had to learn about the news of my son, the very first doctor that we went to was part of a consortium. And in this consortium, you have to see all of the doctors because you never know who's going to be on call when you deliver. So the very first doctor that we saw, my husband noted, "Tifphani, you are unusually quiet in the room." And I said, "Honey, this is not going to be the doctor that's going to deliver our baby." And he said, "Where is this coming from?" And I said, "This doctor, he looks like he's 12 years old. How many has he graduated school? Where are the degrees?" And my husband had to stop me. And he said, "Tifphani, you have shared so many stories with me and with others throughout your career about the challenges that you have sometimes when you walk into a room, whether it's how you look, whether it's your age, or anything otherwise that falls into the umbrella of diversity and inclusion. But yet these words you just uttered, you literally had a moment where you passed this judgment." And I just said, "Oh my gosh." And as I fast forward through the story, guess who delivered my son? The very individual that I said, "No way, no." And it was the best delivery ever, and the doctor that just took the best care of our family.
That's awesome.
So we have to be transparent, right? And acknowledge that we all have a story and an experience. And I think when we share that with each other, when we're open with each other, that exchange, wow, it opens doors and it builds community, right? And it's that exchange of ideas. It's critical.
That's wonderful. Well, I love that story, and I have the opposite bias. I would want the young person with technology experience and the latest techniques, So if I come in there and they're older than me, I'm like, uh-oh. I'm almost anything, by the way, and that's terrible. I'm sorry. But I mean, as it relates to services for me. So I'm the opposite, and it is a bias, and I have to watch it. It's not fair. And we all have those ways of thinking. And so I love that you're so, willing to presence yours and share it. And that vulnerability and sharing is part of generosity too.
Yes,
like I'll go first, I'll put my palms up first. So I love that. Well, so we're coming up to time here. I'd like to just ask is there any summary statement or story or something that you'd like to say to our audience and to Amy and I who are learning from you about generosity in leadership and about fostering it or practicing it or just whatever, because I know you've had a little bit of time to think about this topic since you knew you were coming, and that's what we've been journeying on. So any final words?
Be the change, really be the vision. Oftentimes, especially for us, 3 women here today, right? We don't always see ourselves in the room. We don't always see ourselves at the table, but let's not fear being there. Just because we don't see ourselves there, let's give to each other. Let's support each other, right? Let's support those that aren't at the table, that really don't have a voice, that they've amplified, that are trying to get there, right? To help promote and to accelerate. If we can give of ourselves in that way, wow, it's just going to make a difference and change the landscape for our profession.
I love it. Sharing is caring or something like that. And bringing people along, bringing people in, inviting them in if you do get a seat at the table. when you get a seat at the table, then
Yeah.
looking around for who's missing and starting to share and bring people in. I love it.
Well,
Well, Tifphani,
one thing I always say with that is you should have one arm reaching for where you want to go and one arm pulling somebody else with you. And so there always has to be an eye on both in order to, appreciate all the people that gave you opportunity and make sure that we do get more people at the table.
Yes, indeed.
I love that image, Amy.
Yeah.
I do. I love the visual imagery there. Fantastic. Well, ladies, as always, the time flew by. And Tifphani, we are so grateful that you took the time to be with us on this Friday and to share with our audience. We consider you to be a phenomenal leader, and we know you're growing and learning and getting better every day, but you're really, really pretty awesome. Just amazing. You're an amazing role model. And I am so grateful to have you as a friend and to have you as a contributor. So thanks so much. I know Amy and I were really excited when you said yes. So thanks for sharing, and we'll keep you posted on other opportunities related to generosity, because there'll be more.
I welcome it. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, Tifphani.
Thanks, everybody.